All right, everyone. Erdogan is pissed at the rest of Europe, so he decided that he was going to allow refugees from the Syrian war that's still burning on and on to enter Turkey. And he's like, well, yeah, just go to the Greek border, go up there, don't settle in Ankara or Istanbul, he says. And so it's, I guess, several 100,000 additional people. They had been sort of at the southern end of Turkey, if I remember correctly, sort of being housed there, and he just said, fuck it. This is a punitive action. This is an attempt to force the hand of the rest of Europe and force them, I guess, to pony up help for Turkey in this war effort. That's just a crazy idea. There shouldn't even be fighting still going on. How many years has the Syrian civil war actually been going? How many times have single cities been pit-bombed and changed hands over and over again to the point where half of the country is a goddamn wasteland? By the way, I will say this. The Western governments are partially culpable for the problem. I don't think that means that there need to be the taking in of refugees or migrants or whatever you choose to term them. I do think, though, that it's regrettable. I feel sorry for the Syrian people for being used essentially as a political pawn for so long now. And that's what happened. I've had nothing but sympathy for these people, because think about the situation. The U.S. or some other Western government funds terrorists in your country. Those terrorists, take up arms and start fighting your government. Your government gets backed by the Russians almost immediately and by the Iranians. They're bombing one another constantly, including your home. So your home gets rockets fired through. You've seen half of your neighbors die or get dragged off into a gulag or something. So now you don't have a home. And now all of a sudden the same countries that started the problem are telling you to move in. Yeah, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Very generous of the liberal governments of Western Europe. It's very generous of the French government. Very generous of Angela Merkel, who probably sells weapons to all these groups. So Germany makes some good tanks, I guess. So, they buy Leopard tanks and then kill each other, and then people move into Berlin or whatever. This is crazy talk. The world policing that goes on in the West never has made sense anyway, but it makes even less sense with Syria. Because you've got the liberals arguing, hey, we should bomb them, just don't bomb them too much, just drone them occasionally. You've got like the Obama people. We're going to fire drones at you, destroy your neighborhood, and then let you move in. That's what Obama told these people. Trump comes along, he's largely withdrawn U.S. efforts in the region, but still stubbornly clings to the notion that we should have a few troops there. In a major flashpoint. I don't think we should have anyone there, and I don't think we should be backing any side specifically. Let other people sort it out. And as far as the Turkish government saying, hey, march to the Greek border, I guess the Greek government has set up their lines basically and is attempting to prevent the problem from metastasizing. Isn't it kind of an act of war against the Greeks that the Turkish government would do that? Isn't that kind of an act of war, taking enormous numbers of people who, by the way, they're not Turkish, they're Syrian, or from other parts south, taking them and saying, fuck it, and then putting them on the border? And by the way, what happens if coronavirus breaks out among this group of people? It's already in Greece, by the way. It is spreading around. It's probably in Turkey, although nobody's tested positive yet. What happens if they get the plague, proverbially? Hasn't this happened before? I'm pretty sure this happened back during the Dark Ages at one point. I think it might have involved Turkish military maneuvers at the time anyway as well. Or was it like the Mongols or something at the time, or Attila the Hun? I can't remember. I need to brush up on my medieval history, especially since, people are comparing it to the Black Plague. Not exactly the most apt comparison. I know, but I digress. I personally think what the European government should do is make it clear, no, if you let them further into Turkey, they're going to stay in Turkey. Because we're not going to deal with this shit. You're fighting a war, go ahead and fight the war. Why should we be, helping bomb people? And by the way, on this particular issue, I have no problem with Turkey as a political entity per se, but why is there even fighting going on there? It doesn't make fucking sense in the first place. It really doesn't, because all of these, look, this whole area is a massive flashpoint. There are like how many armies fighting each other there? The more others get involved, the worse it'll get. Turkey's literally asking for additional problems in the region right on its southern border anyway. If the rest of Europe were to get involved, people want the U.S. to get further involved. The Democrats in the U.S. are constantly rambling about how Trump is abandoning our allies in the region. Well, what do you expect him to do? Put thousands more troops in to get shot at by everybody else? Russia and Iran and Turkey and several different Kurdish groups and the FSA and Assad's forces and Lebanese militias and everybody else fighting in the region. I mean, fucking, it's like Megiddo or something. It's crazy talk to even be involved in the Middle East. The U.S. never should have been involved to begin with. We never should have invaded Iraq. We never should have, none of that bullshit. We never should have been involved in trying to overthrow the Egyptian government. Boy, was that Obama's biggest blunder. It was a huge blunder to arm the FSA in Syria. They got their ass kicked anyway. We ended up, half those weapons got into the hands of ISIS, which is why he scrambled to try to bomb everything that moved in order to put the genie back in the bottle on that one, because he didn't want another fucking 9/11 sort of situation that he'd be actually blamed for. Obama's policy sucked. Bush's policy sucked, arguably worse. It's actually difficult in retrospect to decide who sucked worse, George W. or Obama. And it's difficult to imagine which European nation has been the most inept in their response, because I remember the French for a while were bombing things in the region. Germany's constantly throwing its dick around. Angela Merkel can't help it because, of course, Germany wants cheap slave labor. So she's like, yeah, come all ye unfaithful. And the Greek government gets involved. For a while there, they basically stood down and said, oh, yeah, you can come through. Just don't stay here, essentially. And then, of course, you've got the Schengen area, which becomes a problem. It's crazy. It doesn't make any fucking goddamn sense at all what's happening in that region. And then the Turkish government decides to weaponize people. It's like you'll have people on the left in Europe and in the U.S. saying, oh, how can you turn away these refugees? They're starving and stuff. Well, they're being used as pawns by the Turkish government at the moment to try to create war. Yes, absolutely, you should reject that notion. You should think of better things to do. Maybe the free movement of people should be for people that are already within a zone and shouldn't involve everyone in the fucking world. We have that problem in the United States too, where people come into the country, don't really intend to assimilate because there's no real method by which they can assimilate. They're illegal immigrants. And then other people within the United States say, no, everyone should be able to have like driver's licenses and shit. It doesn't make any sense the way these things are handled. It's an economic drain. If anything, it creates unaccountable war too. When Turkey and all of these other groups can bomb one another into oblivion in a region, and people can simply flee the battlefield and wander through and go to Europe, it creates a lack of accountability because otherwise there'd be civilians within the region to be fired upon. It would make it more difficult for combat to take place. That's probably not a bad thing. I'm not arguing that, civilians should be attacked. I'm saying if they're present, hopefully there's more restraint shown. Hopefully these governments and militia groups don't fire upon one another for fear of the rest of the world destroying them. Hopefully people can calm down. Well, what are you fighting for anyway? It's a stretch of desert. What the fuck's the fucking point? I just don't understand. And I really don't understand these Western governments saying, you know what, we're going to fuck around in the Middle East, bomb people, make millions of refugees, then welcome them in and expect them to feel like we're being generous. And not like we're fucking psychopaths. That's about all. Peace out.